What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we got another rant episode. But if you're new to the podcast or if you're unfamiliar with the different types of segments, there's full-length interviews with experts, athletes, coaches to help, exemplify what they do to help get their zone going, right? Whether that's helping guys in zones of training, helping in the zone of skill acquisition, or maybe even just how as athletes, how they get in their zone, get ready to just absolutely dominate, right? You have the mental minutes, those quick mental game hacks to help elevate your performance, and then deep dive educational explorations to just kind of get a little bit more in depth on some things. But for any other further questions, topics, or suggestions, feel free to either text that. There's a text link right below in the description, or email in the zone podcast 123 at gmail.com. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get right into this one. This is kind of a concerning rant for me, to be honest. And forgive me if I get a little political in this one, but it's bleeding into the game of sports. So hear me out for these things, right? I'm not going to get into the whole, you know, things with the Olympics that are got. I think you guys already kind of know and see that on your own feeds, but this one in particular is kind of flying underneath the radar a little bit. Not necessarily for the state of Illinois, though. So for the state of Illinois, they're kind of pushing this thing out where it was a new all-star participation bylaw, basically essentially saying, hey, if you're a high school athlete, you cannot participate in all-star games for the length of your high school eligibility. So starting your freshman year until you graduate high school, you can't go to a all-star type game, which I think is absurd. Initially, whenever I heard that, I was like, okay, well, how's that going to affect travel ball? How's that going to affect certain things? From what I understand, what I interpret, I don't think it's keeping kids from travel ball necessarily, but if they wanted to go to a national team, for example, or they wanted to go to, you know, Select Fest is a really big thing now in Perfect Game, right? Or maybe like all states that might be in a regional area. Maybe, I was participating in like area codes. So there's tryouts that you go to, and all of a sudden, if you're good enough to go play there, I personally, when I first started playing baseball, and this was back in Little League, right? What motivated me to get better as a player was seeing other guys have all-star jerseys. And I was like, hey, how'd they get those jerseys? That wasn't on one of our teams in our league. Found out it was an all-star jersey, and all the kids started wearing their jersey to school. And I'm like getting a little bit of FOMO, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's get after this thing. I want to be, I want to get after it in baseball. Um, but just with that bylaw that's getting pushed through in Illinois, it just really rubs me the wrong way, to be honest. And short term, I think it's going to really affect the kids like the 2028 class coming up. So if they've even participated in any of those things or they're looking to do that in the future, they kind of have to bug out of those, right? So, and, being around showcase baseball and things like that, they're probably kind of deterred for any national team to even recruit kids for Illinois, or that might even just completely deter some of these kids to play high school baseball at all, right? And I think that would potentially decline high school sports, specifically in baseball and softball, what this bylaw is targeted towards, right? Because like really competitive athletes, they're going to play and they want to play against kids who are better than them or maybe equal caliber. If all they're doing is just smacking around a bunch of high school kids, for lack of better terms, and they don't have any real competition, they're going to go somewhere where they're a little bit more challenged, especially if they're trying to play at the next level, whether that's college or professional, right? So I could see this going, if this does continue to go through, and it doesn't bounce back, right? Like I see a lot of shift going to these travel teams where kids aren't going to be playing in school ball anymore. And they're just like, hey, like I have more opportunity for exposure. I have more opportunity for this. And they're going to do more things with that. And, unfortunately, that's going to also hinder the high school programs. It's going to hinder the coaches that are there. What if some of the coaches are also part of the travel organizations, right? And maybe they're also recruiting for higher level teams. I can't get behind it because it's promoting, and this is kind of where it gets a little bit political, for people to feel quote unquote included. This DEI BS that's going through is, I'm honestly fed up with it, to be honest. For it to affect some of these guys, especially through their careers where they can't even go get exposure for certain things, it makes no sense. Now, let me backtrack a little bit here and clarify that, a lot of these all-star things are probably a little fabricated. Some of these things at PG, right? Like they're trying to just build hype and get things through there. And it's a lot of it can be a money grab. Again, I said can, it's not always that, but again, reverting back to before, a lot of these guys want to play against higher level competition to see how well they stack up against guys who are the big D1 prospects, or maybe they're looking to be potentially drafted. They want to play against those dudes, right? But if this spreads to other states, man, I just think this is going to be absolutely detrimental to high school sports overall. Um, and I can't get behind it. Like maybe there was another motive that I'm not aware of. Maybe some of these kids that are going to the all-star things, I know some of them, maybe they're compensated, so they're no longer quote unquote amateurs. I didn't get to read any of that, but I'll put that in here for you guys to read in the show notes. But it's just going to affect more than what they think, where they're just trying to include more kids or other kids to not be left out. It's going to absolutely kill athlete development for some of these kids. Good luck seeing any more draft picks out of Illinois, probably, unless they're just, again, completely exiting and going straight to travel ball. Or a trend now that's happening really here in the South too is a lot of these kids are foregoing high school and they just go do online classes, and they go to all these little academies, kind of like IMG or some other ones that are nearby, and they just do online school and kind of cut out some of the middle stuff. Um, which again, there's a pros and cons to that. I do think that kids need to have some social interaction with, other people that aren't like them, that may not be, baseball players, things like that. Like I think that's definitely valid, that people need to have that exposure. But if it's something that you're getting relatively serious in, and everyone's situation is a little bit different of what they're needing, right? Or maybe, they don't have the opportunities and playing time, or the competition level at their local high school is really, really low, and they want to go to, some of those academies. I get it. Hey, whatever you think is best for your future career and whatever helps you develop the most. I think that's really essentially what you need to do. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of voices being pushed out here for uh, coaches, parents. I'm sure the athletes are just kind of like tucking their tail between their legs. They're like, well, I want to play high school ball because right now, everyone who's done that has played high school ball, and not many people have went down that path of, hey, maybe I just don't play high school baseball and I just go do travel ball. Or a very crazy anomaly was Bryce Harper. He, got his GED, then went to a JUCO route, which again, his level of performance was way out there to where if he did play high school ball, like it would have been just laughable with some of these kids and probably made him worse. Right. So, I mean, if for the kids who are in that caliber of stature of athlete, I think, yeah, you probably may not want to hang around high school anyways. But again, anomaly, very top 1% of those guys. But there's a lot of baseball players out there now that are kind of in the middle of the pack. They can play high school and they can play travel. Some of them might be good enough to do some of these all-star things. Um, if I was to talk with someone who kind of came up with this decision, maybe there was a bunch of different, all-star teams, things like that. There were arm injuries involved along with that because they were going longer in season. Okay, maybe there's some valid points there, but again, it's not always about the pitch count. It's not always about the amount of playing time that's going to be correlated to injury. And I'll say it again, some of these kids may be a little underdeveloped and they're just playing too much versus actually taking some time off from competition. Again, notice I said competition, not just time off from playing or training or throwing. I think there is definitely some research out there where it says, hey, like maybe you just take a few weeks off. Uh, you know, and again, I'm kind of digressing here a little bit, but there's different schools of thought with that. And relatively for me, if you take away, more than a month off from throwing, you're kind of in a you're starting back and if you're not at that level of a higher level athlete, you're not at that Bryce Harper level. I don't think you can afford to do that because you need to press and continue to train, continue to push forward um, for some of those things, right? To make sure that you're kind of closing that gap. Hey, I only throw 80, but all of my, teammates and peers my age are that I at a level that I want to be at are throwing 90 plus. Well, you got to kind of train to get to that point, right? And you can't just take time off and hope for the best. You got to be able to do things in between, do things, work while you wait, right? A bunch of other different things that you can put there for that. But it's just really disappointing to kind of circle this all back in and uh, back to that new bylaw that's pushed through. It's very, very disappointing. And I hate that I even have to be somewhat political on a podcast that's all about baseball and development. But at this point, like I can't stay silent anymore, right? Like this is where it kind of crosses the line where if it's starting to interfere with athletes, if it's starting to interfere with the way people live, which it is now, I can't stay silent anymore, guys. Sorry about it. Hopefully you guys are getting this word out, or if you're listening to this and you're not necessarily affected by it, it might be coming your way pretty soon. Be coming to your doorstep if you guys don't speak up here come November. And I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to tell you who to endorse or who to vote for or any of those things because, again, that's your choice and you have your right and your decision to be able to do that. But I will say if you don't vote, you don't do anything accordingly to help, revert some of these things that are going on, then you can't complain. Mic drop there. Right. But I'll stay from this point on in my little zone of baseball training. But I just wanted to express that to you guys and make sure that this was known that you can't just fold over and let this die because it's going to change a lot of things. Who knows? Maybe it's a good thing for the better. Maybe they're trying to push out baseball and softball in high school. Who knows? Not really sure why, but appreciate you listening. If you know of anyone who needs to hear this, or maybe you want someone to be a little bit more entertained for the day and they want to get a little kick out of me just kind of going on a rant, please share the episode and stay in the zone.